Good evening, lovely listeners, and welcome back. And this is my favorite night of the week. It is premiere night. So for those of you who are here live, we get to chat over there in the chat box on the right. And I am super excited about that because it's been a long time. For those of you who are new here, or if this is the first video you're stumbling on, I usually don't ramble this long at the beginning of my videos. And it's usually more scripted, but for this particular video, I just wanted to chat with you guys while everybody filters in and sees the notifications and grabs a snack or whatever they want to do. If you're watching this after the premiere, go ahead and use the timestamps in the description box below, and you can skip right on ahead to the stories because this might be a lengthy introduction. So, for tonight, we have several Let's Not Meet stories, so hopefully everybody will be excited about that. I like those stories, most of them. And before that, though, I do want to explain what has been going on lately and why I haven't posted a video in so long. So, the first thing that happened is that Premiere Pro, which is a great program, it's the editing software that I use, has this weird glitch in it for some reason where it limits me to 10 minutes of audio unless I put a visual that is of a longer duration. So like you can set an image to be as long, like in duration, as you want it to be. So if I go in and, for instance, the image you're looking at now, if I set that to like 2 hours, then I have 2 hours of recording time. So it's kind of a weird workaround. Still not sure what's going on, but it works for now, so we'll go with it. And yeah, so that happened. That took me up to about take 17. I think this is the 27th time I've tried to record this video, like no joke. And so then there's just been construction and interruptions, and it's just like the universe did not want me to record. So I have a very limited amount of time in the morning, really early, and really late at night to record. And if I can't get something to happen within those few hours, then things don't happen. I do the weekends also, but yeah, so it's been a little rough. I spent the weekend trying to figure out technical glitches. So yeah, anyway, we're here now, so it all worked out. I also wanted to apologize for those of you who were around for that random live stream that I didn't know was happening on my own channel. Thank the gods for Kelly, who is my mod, right now my only mod. And she messaged me frantically on Messenger, and she was like, "Are you recording? Are you streaming? Because your channel's streaming and you're not there." So I think I figured it out. At the very, very beginning of April, I had tried to figure out setting up live streaming because I had it set up for my art channel, but I didn't know if it would be complicated to do it for a second channel. Anyway, so I think what I had done was I was like, well, I'll just set this date for the end of April, and then I'll get rid of it when I'm done figuring this out, and I never got rid of it. So the date was still in there. So I think that's what happened. On the plus side, I did figure out how to live stream. It was really simple. You just put in the different stream key, which I'm sure like everybody in the world knows. But yeah, that was really easy. So I probably could have just jumped back on a live stream, but I was an idiot, so that's what happened with that. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight, well, first I wanted to say thank you for all of the new people, because we have many more lovely listeners than we had the last time I posted a video, and I know most of you came from Mortis Media, so I'm super grateful to him for having me on his channel again. But for those of you who didn't come here by way of Mortis Media, welcome as well, and if you haven't checked out Mortis Media, you definitely should. I will leave a link to his channel in the description box below. So there's a lot going on this month. There's a lot going on this channel and my art channel, so it's a very busy month for me. If you are interested in my non-horror related art and stuff like that, I will put a link to my other channel down below. But for those of you who are just here for the horror, this is my dedicated horror channel, so you're in the right place. So things are changing a little bit in May, but in a good way, don't worry. So I know that the backbone of the horror community is the true Reddit story videos, and I want to keep that as sort of the bulk of the content that I have here. On the other hand, as a creator, I want to work on a bunch of different creative projects. We have the Creature Feature series coming up and Classic Tales of Terror. I'm actually looking to record like basically audiobooks for Dracula and Frankenstein, as well as some other like Poe and stuff like that. But Dracula and Frankenstein are like 5.5 to 6 hour reads, so that'll be interesting. But yeah, I'm just really excited about all the content that's coming up. So that being said, I currently have 58 videos planned for May, which, yes, means that most days will have 2 uploads, so hopefully that doesn't bother anybody. I'm not sure that it would. More content, I think, is a good thing. But the one reason that I'm doing that is because that allows me to sort of keep the Reddit content as sort of the bulk, and so I'm not alienating people who just want the Reddit content. It also allows me to make content for those of us who enjoy, original stories and creepypastas and, research about urban legends and lore and creatures and all that kind of stuff. So that's really fun. And the second reason I'm doing that is I really just want to build up my library of content here. So I don't have a ton of videos, obviously, because my channel is pretty new. But I just want to, bulk up the content here a little bit and have more of a collection. And at the rate that I've been uploading, that won't happen anytime soon. So, yeah, I'm just trying to ramp up my content game a little bit and have more for you guys to listen to. So, I think that's it. I did figure out live streaming, so maybe we will do a live stream, I don't know, maybe sometime this month. I think there's one scheduled for like the end of May anyway, so maybe I'll just leave that one, but actually be prepared this time. So, yeah, and for those of you who have been asking about where you can submit stories, you can submit your stories to ravenreadshorror@outlook.com. I check that inbox kind of infrequently. I check it maybe once every couple weeks. But if enough of you are telling me in the comments that you sent me something, I'll go and check it. So, without further ado, I think that's about it for the introduction. I know that was very lengthy. I'm sorry for those of you who had to sit through it, but what I would like to know in the comments, or I'm sorry, the chat over there on the right, just let me know what you think about that arrangement, if you're okay with 2 uploads a day, things like that, and then we'll do our weekly premieres as well. So, horror art is coming as well, not as dedicated videos, but in the background of some of the videos. So for those of you who have been asking about that, that's coming as well because I finally fixed my camera. Lots of things got fixed in the last 10 days. Alright, so hopefully you are all here now and settled in, and you have your coffee and tea and all that good stuff, whatever it is that you're going to consume and imbibe. So let's get ready for another journey into the night. This happened about 7 years ago, so it won't be perfectly accurate. To set the scene, I live in the outskirts of a town at the end of terraced houses, and there are lots of houses in my area, in front and behind. I was home alone with our 3 dogs. My boyfriend was over at his friend's, which was about a 3-minute walk away. At this time, we didn't really lock the front door if one of us was in the house. Now I do. Nothing really happened where we lived, and we had 3 decent-sized dogs, and we were a bit naive. And to be fair, I had recently moved in here with my boyfriend, and before I lived in a small village where everyone knew everyone, and you could actually leave your door unlocked. So I was sat in my PJs watching TV with all the dogs next to me when the door knocks. It was about 10 p.m. and I was in my pajamas, so I was a little bit annoyed. I got the dogs off me and walked out of my living room, and I pulled the living room door closed, closing the dogs in. Bear in mind, this took all of 10 seconds. And as I approach the door, it swings open, and this man I have never seen before storms into my house and gets right in my face. There's another man and woman right behind him who didn't enter my house. I was literally frozen in shock. The man screamed into my face, "Who the F do you think you are?" I was still in complete shock. "You think you can run around here and do what you want, causing shit?" I said, "What are you on about?" "Oh, don't give me that crap. You think I'm a effing muppet? I saw you and all your little friends running back into this house." I replied, "I'm literally stood here in my pajamas. I haven't been outside." The man said, "Yeah, okay. Do you think I was born yesterday?" I said, "Well, you just walked into someone's house that you've never met and screamed at her, so yeah, maybe." The other man behind him said, "Maybe it wasn't her," to which I shouted back, "Yeah, maybe." At this point, my dog started barking behind the door. The man stared at me for what seems like forever, but it was probably only a couple of seconds, and then quickly walks out and slams the door shut. I was just stood there shaking for a few seconds before I started to just get mad, and I realized what had just happened. I locked the door and rang my boyfriend straight away, who got home in about 1 minute flat, but the group was nowhere to be seen. We didn't call the police. I didn't want to. Don't ask me why, and I couldn't really give my boyfriend a good description when he was asking. In the 7 years since, I have not bumped into these people again, thank God, and I always lock the door now. Thankfully, as we have had 2 other occasions where people have come late at night, but those are other stories. However, if it did happen again, I would like to think that I would handle it better now. But rude, creepy man who stormed into my house late at night? Let's not meet again. My senior year of high school, I started talking with this super hot emo punk kid named Brian on AIM. I was all in. I had just been dumped by my loser high school boyfriend, and Brian was incredibly sweet and always knew what to say. There were some red flags, for sure. Whenever I would finally convince him to send me a picture, he looked a little different in every photo. Like, they could have been pictures of different people, but it looked similar enough, and the guy liner was on point, so I just accepted it. We also never talked on the phone. I would beg him to let me call him, but he always had an excuse. Finally, the summer before I left for college, he let me call him, and his voice was super weird. My friend was convinced that it was like a 50-year-old woman, but I was like, hell no, this is Brian. I was so blinded that I ignored every warning sign. I told him everything. He knew all my passwords, everything about my day-to-day life. Literally every single one of my friends told me he wasn't real and that I needed to stop being a dumbass, but I honestly loved him. That fall, I left for college. My first roommate was a total winebag who had a mile-long list of rules for the room. No boys ever allowed in. I wasn't allowed to touch her Left Behind series that she proudly displayed. No guests after 8 p.m., etc. So I was desperate to bounce. I found out there was an empty room and requested a transfer for winter semester. I knew that going in blind was a risk, but it couldn't be worse than Left Behind chick. At the same time, I was loving everything else about college. Things with Brian kind of waned because life was busy and I wanted to experience everything, aka other dudes. He would call me 20 times a day, message me all the time, constantly barrage me about whether or not I had a Facebook and wanted the password to it. Hell no. Finally, I broke things off for good. The next semester, I moved into my awesome new room. My roommate is a fellow freshman from Massachusetts who was transferred that semester. She was loaded and brought basically everything we would need for the room. Her mom got us matching bedding from Pottery Barn. It was awesome. She was a little weird and always wanted to hang out the first week, but I figured it was just nerves. The first weekend after class started, I was chilling with some friends in the quad area, and she comes over and throws her keys at me and is like, "Have fun screwing these losers." I was like, what the hell is going on? I ended up sleeping at one of my girlfriend's rooms that night because I was super freaked out. The next day, it was like nothing happened. We hung out that whole week. She was very perceptive and helpful. I was amped to have met what I thought would be my college bestie. The next weekend, I convinced her to come out, and we're having a blast dancing with dudes. And then things were escalating with me and soccer jocks, so I let her know I was bailing. We were a 2-minute walk from the soccer house and came with a group, so I figured it was no big deal. I get back to the room later that night, and I see that stuff is torn up. Clothes ripped out of the closet, stuff all over the floor. She's sitting on my bed and her arm is bleeding. I ask her what the hell's going on. She had broken my coffee cup and carved my initials into her arm. I run and got the RA because I'm not trying to get murdered. She ended up getting committed later that night, and her parents flew down. This is where stuff gets even weirder. She was Brian. Yeah. She told her parents, and they told me. She decided to try to start things with me like her true self, applied to my school, called the housing department to request me as a roommate, emailed housing from my email and requested her as my roommate, and then deleted all the emails. Her parents apologized, said that I could keep all the stuff in the room. They withdrew her from classes and left. I got a no contact order, and the craziest story of my life. So, crazy roommate Brian, not Brian, let's never meet again. Okay, so this is a story about the strangest birthday I've ever had. For context, I'm from Germany, and the legal age to drink here is 16 for beer and wine, and 18 for liquor. So on the day I turned 18, me and my best friend decided to go out to our nearest city to grab some drinks at a local bar. Since it was Tuesday night, even though the bar was pretty popular, there wasn't that much around and no people, so we just enjoyed spending time together, sipping some margaritas. All of a sudden, the waitress, who I actually kind of know because she previously graduated from the school I went to, comes up to us saying 2 men want to buy us a drink, pointing at the table at the other end of the outdoor section. At this time it was around 10 p.m., and even though it was midsummer, it started to get dark, so we didn't really see what the guys looked like at first. We just thought, yeah, screw it, why not? And we went over to thank them. At this time, I recognized that they were younger looking, maybe in their mid-20s. At least one of them was. The other guy with him was a middle-aged man, and he was obviously pretty intoxicated already. The younger guy, let's call him Tom, asked us to take a seat, and since he seemed like a nice guy that wanted to chat, we agreed. So as we're talking and getting to know each other a little bit, I noticed the older guy intensely staring at me. Like, he didn't even blink. I looked at him as I noticed this, and it was then that he said, "How old are you? You are so beautiful. Do you even know how beautiful you are?" I told him I had just turned 18, laughed it off, clearly being uncomfortable, and thanked him for the compliment, since I knew he was clearly drunk, and tried to change the topic. As we were talking about life in general, Tom tells us that the older guy is actually his neighbor who's currently going through a divorce, so he wanted to distract him with a night out. We thought it was sweet of him to help this guy going through a hard time. Then he mentions that his neighbor is an architect, encouraging him to maybe talk about his interesting profession rather than creeping on a freshly 18-year-old, because at this point he was constantly interrupting our conversation to tell me kind of inappropriate things, like how sexy and special he thought I was. Then the conversation turned dark real quick. The guy started to talk about how he doesn't seem to have any sense of life anymore and that he wanted to kill himself. I also struggled a lot with depression since I was a child, so I wasn't super freaked out. I was more like feeling sad for the guy and trying to calm him down a little bit, while texting my best friend that was just seated next to me on maybe how we could get out of this situation. But then he said, "I can't. I just want to end it. I have a knife on me right now. I'm going to do it right now." Threatening his life, kind of begging us to tell him a reason to not do it. Tom, at this point, just started to apologize and to calm him down. Didn't really work. I mean, I felt sad for the guy, but we just met him maybe an hour and a half ago. And you never know what an intoxicated man that claims he has nothing to lose that also carries a knife on him is capable of. Me and my best friend, being scared now, come up with a plan over text to fake a call from some male friend of ours who wanted to meet up. So she changed my name in her phone real quick to a guy's name, and so I called her, while hiding my phone in the pocket of my vest. And let me tell you, this bitch performed the most realistic fake phone call I've ever witnessed. It was so good, actually, that for a moment I was like, wait, is she really calling me, or did she find a friend to call? At that point, the man is just begging us not to go, making us even more uncomfortable. But we just apologized ourselves and said we were about to leave. As we were going, Tom asked me for my number. I wanted to leave quickly, so I gave him my number, which he called immediately to make sure it was legitimate, of course, but I blocked him right after he texted me. If you'll ever read this, Tom, I'm really sorry. You seem like a sweet dude, but this night was just not it, Chief. Me and my best friend still kind of joke about this day and how quickly it went from 0 to 100 and how we were definitely not prepared for this. Nothing happened to us that night, but it was very frightening nonetheless. Stay safe, ladies and gentlemen, because even though nothing happened to us in particular, you never know what people are capable of. And birthday suicide guy, let's not meet again. So, my mom just bought groceries and came back home. There's this pretty hefty gate that you have to push to enter. It's a slider gate. So after she pushes it and parks the car, a random dude who's easily 6'8" enters and starts shouting at us. It's clear that he's pretty wasted, but he still seems in control. He's shouting that this is his office, and he holds up a pen, and he says, "Look, this is the pen from my office." We're obviously like, WTF, and we can't understand anything he's saying outside of that. Suddenly, he demands that I go inside and get him some water. But my mom knows that something's fishy, and she's like, "Shut up and get out." He doesn't listen, and he keeps telling me to go get water, so I made some feeble excuse that there is no water. I know, it's stupid. And then I politely tell him to get out. The neighborhood we live in is always calm, and this guy is screaming at the top of his voice. He keeps telling me to go get water, and I'm like, "No, we don't have a bottle to give it to you in." Then he demands that I go into the kitchen and clean him a cup and give him water, to which I say, "No, you need to get out." I realize that he's trying to chase me, probably so that he can pounce and attack my mom, and probably grab anything she has in her hand. My mom is clearly annoyed, so she tells me to just grab the bottle of water that's right inside and give it to him. My dad had just come back from a business trip and had left a bottle of water out. So I run and grab it, and I hand it to him, and I tell him to leave, and I warned him not to return. He replies that there's not enough water, tells me to fill it up and come back. I'm clearly pissed, and so I push him out of the garden and lock the gate, and the guy is screaming at the top of his voice. After chasing him out, I realized that I made a lot of mistakes while dealing with him, but that's what happens when you're scared. I'm 100% sure that he's going to return, but until then, random screaming guy, let's not meet. A few years ago, I had to travel to another town alone. When I arrived, I checked myself into the hotel and went about my business. Later in the evening, I was free. Being in a place that I had visited for the first time, I decided to take a look around, maybe shop a little. Staying in the hotel room seemed so boring. I went to a mall, and since I had nothing better to do, I decided to see a movie there. I had checked the movie times and tried to see what they were showing. I chose one, which started in about a half an hour, and got ready to enjoy myself. After I bought a ticket, I had to kill some time, so I took an ice cream and sat at a table in the common place. At one of the other tables, there was a guy sitting. I didn't pay any attention to him and went on eating my ice cream. Suddenly, this guy starts talking to me. It was something about my beautiful eyes. I thanked him and continued to mind my own business. He offered me to join him at his table, but I politely refused. I thought the conversation was over, but it seemed like he was nowhere near any such thought. He continued talking to me like we were old friends. I tried to ignore him at first, but then I felt maybe that wasn't right, and maybe I should be more polite. Big mistake. He started asking me all kinds of questions, and I was dumb enough to answer him. I told him that I wasn't from here, and he said he was also just visiting this town, which, now that I think about it, sounds like a lie to make me feel more related to him. He said he saw me looking at the movie posters, asked me what movie I was going to, and of course, stupid me, I told him. I really didn't think it would do any harm. Soon enough, he questions me and starts to bother me more and more. I finished my ice cream as fast as I could and made some excuse and left. There was still a lot of time until the movie started, so I had to linger around in shops, hoping that this guy would finish his meal and leave before I got back. When I returned, there was no trace of him. Relieved, I went in front of the theater, waiting the last couple of minutes before they opened up. Just when they opened and people started getting in, guess who came out of nowhere? This guy. He immediately attached himself to me and started talking casually about the movie that we were about to watch. I was already extremely uncomfortable, but I can't forbid someone to watch a movie. Technically, he didn't do anything wrong, even if he clearly bought the ticket just because I told him that I was going to go watch it. We entered, and he starts following me. I start looking for my seat, eager to get rid of him, and then he said something which made me shiver. He casually pointed towards a row and said, "Well, there are our seats." My seat number was exactly where he was showing me, but I had never told him what my seat number was. He not only bought the ticket for the same movie, but he also asked which one was the seat adjacent to mine. I have no idea why the cashier would give him that information. Maybe he lied to her that he's my friend or even boyfriend. I froze at the beginning of the row and calmly said, "Go ahead." He continued towards the seat, but I didn't follow him. I sat right there at the very last seat of the row, close to the exit. There weren't a lot of people in the theater, so there was a very small chance that I had taken someone else's place. Luckily, he didn't move. Maybe he realized that it wasn't going to happen. At the end of the movie, I bolted out, scared that he might follow me. I haven't seen him since. So, creepy theater stalker guy? Let's never meet again. So my family and my mother's partner and his family went together to Bali in 2016. I would have been about 14 at the time, and I was so excited for my first overseas trip. My mother and her partner booked a cruise boat day trip to a few tropical islands. I wore a one-piece swimming suit and a short dress over top. We stayed on the top deck, which had a dance floor, as we headed off to the islands. I was dancing and trying to get my shy sister to join me, and she eventually did. It was fun, until I noticed that there were these three guys on the other side of the dance floor who would point and look over at me. Although it made me anxious, I had decided to ignore it at first. I thought it might have been because my family and I were the only Western people on board, and I am very pale-skinned. I was enjoying being with my family, and I noticed that the three had joined in dancing, eventually getting closer and closer with my sister and I. It seemed as though they were just being friendly as they started copying the way I danced, and I thought it was quite funny. But then they started giving me a lot of attention, staring, pointing their camera phone at me, things like that. It made me very uncomfortable, so as kindly as I could, I went back to my family and stayed around them for a while. When my family was getting changed in the changing rooms, I stayed by our storage and simply took off my dress because I already had my bathing suit on underneath. Unknown to me, one of the guys had seated himself very close behind me on a bench and stared my body down with his phone in his hands and this eerie look on his face. I was mortified. Trying to ignore the cold vibes this man gave me, I heard him ask me if he could take a photo with me. I kindly declined and went back to putting my things away. He still stayed there, staring at me, almost frozen, like he didn't know how to handle the rejection or something. So he just stayed there watching me. Luckily, my parents' partner had come back to put things away too and could sort of sense the unease I felt and hung around me until the guy backed off. I tried to forget the situation as we visited the islands and spent our day there. Boarding back onto the cruise ship, I was walking around the ship, and the same three creeps caught me in their eye. Everywhere I went on the ship, I knew that they were somewhere around me, leering, pretending to bump into me, and disregarding my personal space for their own sick pleasure. I had the deep feeling that if I was caught alone with these men, they would try to hurt me. So I went back to my family and sat in the lower deck as the ship returned to the mainland. My seat was next to my mother's, next to the aisle, and it faced the back of the ship. Then I could see the three men across from me. One of them went right up to the seat across from us, rested against the side of it, his friends behind him leering over at me, phone in hand, and I knew he was taking pictures of me. At this point, I was starting to panic. I had no control of these continuously closer men who were coming up to me, staring, pointing, and taking pictures. I fell into a panic attack, and it took me a while to finally calm down. I explained to my family about the men following me around the ship. Fortunately, my reaction had driven off the men, but I was just feeling so exploited and out of control. I was so young then, but even now, I still feel anxious traveling or going on vacation. So, three creepy stalker dudes, let's never meet again. So, a little background info. I'm an avid cyclist and find myself biking to faraway places rather routinely. I have a GoPro to record my bike rides because a couple of years ago I was run over by a car, but they ran away. And if this were to happen again, I wanted to be able to have it on camera this time. This is an important part to the story. I was in the western suburbs of Chicago when this story happened. I was biking through one of the downtown areas along a river. Up ahead, I see what looks to be a shady, shirtless homeless guy with a bag. I'm hearing him mumbling about doing something to the library, which was to the right as I'm about to pass him. I say, "On your left," 3 times. He didn't move out of the way, so I just went around him. I hear him yell, "Hello, camera, do I look beautiful?" I made it to the intersection, which was right there. He was maybe 40 feet away from me. He then says, "That's a pretty camera you got there." Right after he said this, he grabbed something out of his bag and threw his bag into the bushes. I didn't see what he had in his hands, but as he's walking through the grass approaching me, I'm on a sidewalk, fight or flight kicks in. Then he says, "Don't go anywhere." I needed to cross the street, but I couldn't cross since the light was red. I decided to book it to the right, in the direction the traffic was going. I hear him yell, "That's right, run away, coward." There was a train which stopped traffic, and I was able to cross the street and get out of there as fast as I could. I didn't call the police, and I should have. I wanted to get out of there, and I needed to get back home since it was sunset. I also found out that my GoPro had run out of battery before the encounter happened. If I got the encounter on camera, I would have shared it, but no such luck. Anyway, shady guy who was going to do who knows what to me, let's not meet again. When I was younger, between the ages of 12 and 15, I lived in a very quiet and well-to-do neighborhood. There were some kids, but it was mostly older couples or retired seniors who lived there. It's a very safe neighborhood. My parents don't even lock their car doors at home, and sometimes the front door is left open with the storm door unlocked, so nobody really assumes that anything's going to happen. Anyway, since there were so few kids in the neighborhood, we all knew each other. Activity pretty much centered around this one house with a family that had 5 kids, 3 of whom were also around 12 to 15. Often we'd go out in the early evening or nighttime to their house and play manhunt in the dark while our parents would hang out and catch up. Keep in mind that my family has 4 kids, and with the additional neighborhood kids, we had about 10 to 12 kids under the age of 16 playing manhunt at 10 p.m. Activity stayed on the property of the house, but we did venture towards the street at times. One night we were playing manhunt and getting quite into it. It was late, probably 9:30 to 10 o'clock p.m. I don't remember exactly what happened, but at one point we started noticing that there was a red pickup truck who kept driving really slowly past the house where we were playing. Us, being naive children, didn't think much of it at first. A lot of people are friends in the neighborhood, so we assumed it was just a family friend, until it didn't stop happening. I, being the oldest of 4 and the second oldest of the group, and also incredibly paranoid, decided that we should all probably go to the backyard where it's fenced off and tell our parents. They were moderately concerned, but weren't worried, and told us to stay in the backyard. After that, we were hesitant to keep playing, but eventually the truck was forgotten, and we organized another manhunt night at the same house. We were having fun and doing normal children things when we noticed the red truck again. It kept driving by slowly with the windows rolled all the way up and tinted so we couldn't see who was inside. The game ended immediately, and the parents decided that it was probably best if everyone went home after that. Manhunt nights didn't really happen again after that, and we became more paranoid about being out late. Thankfully, nothing else happened, but creepy red truck driver, let's not meet. So about 10 years ago, I worked at a laundromat alone and at night in a terrible part of town. To sum the place up, it was down the street from the projects, and lots of prostitutes would come in asking to use my phone. Crackheads tried to sell me things, like an opened container of powdered iced tea, and there had been a serial killer whose house you could see from our parking lot. It was around 8 at night and dark on a Saturday. Saturdays were the worst, and as usual, I was working alone. The only customers in there were a Spanish couple and their young son, probably around 5 years old. A Rastafarian man walks in, tall and burly, with long, gray-black dreads, looking very pissed. My first reaction was to turn and say hello as he walked in the door, but I was taken aback by the angry glare on his face. He was walking quickly, and it looked like he was about to fight someone. He began pacing around the laundromat, sweating and just clearly on some type of really shitty drug. He did that for a good 10 minutes and then started saying things to the Spanish couple very loudly and out of breath. He knelt down and started talking to their son, and when he touched the kid's shoulder, I could see the parents pulling him back, obviously uncomfortable. As politely as I could, I said, "Hey, sir, I'm really sorry, but my boss really doesn't want anyone in here if they aren't doing laundry." He stood up and glared at me and said, "What am I doing wrong? I'm doing nothing wrong. What am I doing wrong?" I repeated what I said quietly, and he started walking closer to me. As he was walking toward me, he told me that I was the reason why his people were brought to this country, that I manipulated them and I'm the reason for all his pain. He was getting more and more worked up and louder. He was so angry with me that spittle was flying while he screamed. "One day someone's gonna throw you in the dumpster. One day you'll be in pieces all over the ground." Then he stormed out and slammed the door. I called my boss and let him know what happened and tried to calm myself down. I grabbed a pen to keep on me, figuring I could try to jam it into his neck if he came and attacked me. The Spanish couple packed their clothes into their car, and the lady popped back in to tell me that the angry guy was pacing around the parking lot. I looked out, and sure enough, he was, so I locked myself in the office and called my boss and the police. My boss came and escorted me out. The cops never even showed up. Fast forward to a few days later, I get a call from a detective who wants to question me about the other night in the laundromat. 2 hours after I left that night, a woman got stabbed in our parking lot, and the description of the guy matched the big Rastafarian man. I never found out if she lived or if they even caught the guy. But, giant Rastafarian guy, let's not meet again. I had just moved to a new city, and I had a few friends, but still wanted to meet some new people and maybe a cute girl to date. I began using Tinder, which I had fun with in other cities. I matched with this gorgeous woman, way out of my league. Her profile was funny and interesting. We get to chatting, and she's flirtatious and clever, and let it drop that she went to a top artsy school in France, so I'm intrigued. And also thinking she's out of my league. Why is she so interested? So I decide to Google her, which is not something I used to do before every date. Usually this will bring up a Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, etc. But when I clicked enter on her name, it came back with 125,000 hits, news articles, videos, the works. Chronologically, the weirdness is thus. As a teenager, she was one of those women who started up correspondence with serial killers and had been engaged to 2 on death row before they were put to death. Next, she was engaged to her 6th grade English teacher in her 20s. He was famous for having falsely claimed to have killed JonBenet Ramsey. For this, she was on Good Morning America, saying that he was going to use her to recruit 6th grade girls for a sex cult. Lastly, she became a high-end escort in this city and had a fairly popular blog about it. In general, not shaming the sex worker community, but still it was kind of like sprinkles on the weirdness of this whole thing. After seeing these things, I was intrigued and creeped out by her and found out that she was the adopted daughter of a local billionaire. I decided this shit wasn't worth it and deleted Tinder the day before our date. The next day, she messaged me on another dating app asking me if I was still going to meet her for a drink. Let's not meet. This took place a month or so ago, and it still freaks me out. My room is in the attic of my house, with the 3 large windows facing the backyard. I like natural light in my room, so I didn't have curtains covering them at the time. The backyard ends at a cinder block wall, which holds back the dirt hill behind it, and a chain link fence sits on top of the dirt. Right after the fence is a large Catholic church parking lot. A few shrubs grow on this dirt embankment, but they are sparse, and the view to my room, especially in the winter and spring, is very clear. Over the years, I've noticed a car parking at the back of that lot. facing my window with the headlight on, but I didn't actively think about this. That is, until I was dancing around my room, half-dressed, saw the car, and realized I had seen a black car there at least a couple of times in the past months, if not longer. I went downstairs and told my parents. My dad, who is very protective, told me to turn off the lights in my room and stay away from the window. He grabbed his binoculars but couldn't clearly make out the car. I thought maybe the person was just waiting to buy drugs. My dad went downstairs and told me to keep an eye on the car. 10 to 20 minutes passed, and I sat on my bed, away from the window but still able to see the car. Suddenly, my room got lighter, and I realized that whoever was in the car had turned their lights on high beam. I told my parents, and they said they were going to drive past the car, take a picture of the license plate with the flash on, and drive away. I went upstairs to keep watch, and as I waited, I wondered if perhaps it was a couple making out, but my parents took a picture and drove away. The driver didn't react. I started to wonder if I had overreacted. An hour passed. No drugs were traded, and the car didn't move or turn down its headlights. I glanced out my window and realized that whoever was in the car had turned on their lights and was rooting around. And there was only one person, a man, possibly younger, in a hoodie, but that's all I could see before the interior lights went out. The car sat there for quite a while longer, and then I looked up again and it was gone. In total, it had sat there for about 3 hours. It had been months now, and they haven't returned, which is sketchy within itself. It's completely possible that I blew it out of proportion, but the idea that someone has been watching me doing God knows what, maybe even taking pictures of me undressed or something, is something that I just can't get over. So, person in a dark car who may or may not have been stalking me, let's not meet again. I grew up in Ohio, but would spend my summer breaks visiting my dad, who lived in England. This gave me the rare and fortunate opportunity to see a lot of Europe during my teenage years. In the summer of 2009, I took a trip with my father and stepmother, with one of the stops being Graz, Austria. After a day of sightseeing, we checked into our hotel, which was just outside of the city. Graz sits at the foot of the Alps, and our hotel was elevated, which gave us a nice view of the city at night, depending on your vantage point. This also made it somewhat secluded on a darker back road. The hotel was also unique in that parts of it were broken up into separate cabin-like B&Bs. My father and stepmother stayed down the street in one of these cabins, while I had my own room in the main building, which was more like your standard pub. While a lot of these details may seem like minutiae, its layout and location will become very important. It's also important to note that my room sat over the hotel's restaurant, so the roof extended out from under my window. If I wanted to, I would have been able to step out and walk across it. We were only staying there one night before moving on with our trip. It was warm, being on the second floor, so I had one of my 2 windows cracked to let in the breeze. The only English-speaking channels were CNN and MTV, so I just laid there with the lights off, the only glow coming from the TV. As I began to doze, I heard something. It sounded like gravel shifting, coming from outside. Already being a paranoid person, I turned the TV off, making my room completely black. I slowly moved towards the window, telling myself I heard a small animal or something. I crouched behind the translucent curtains and peered out. Out on the roof, maybe 20 to 30 feet away, I saw a man. He was standing upright, facing out towards the city and back patio of the hotel. My nerves settled. I figured it was somebody who had the same idea that I did. He had probably climbed out of one of the rooms next to mine to get a view of the city. No big deal. I slowly started to step away from the window when I heard the sound again. It again sounded like gravel shifting, but I could tell it wasn't coming from the man standing at a distance. It was coming right by my window. I was lucky to have the curtains I did, as they allowed me to see out, but with my lights off, I was shielded from sight. I came back to the window and looked down and to my right. Crouching down was a man. He had a hood up and what looked like some kind of blank white mask on. I understand now that this might be my mind exaggerating, but the memory, that white, plain face, is burned into my brain. Think something like the movie Hush, or The Court of Owls if you're a Batman fan. Either way, it was clear that he was trying to peer into my room, but couldn't see me because I was blocked out by the curtains. I stood there, staring at him for a few seconds before slowly leaning in and banging my hand on the window. He took off, as did the man at the ledge. It's clear now that the other guy was a lookout. After shutting and locking the window, I went down to the lobby and found the manager of the hotel. He barely spoke English, so explaining what had happened was hard, but once he finally understood what I was saying, he dismissed it, repeating "impossible" multiple times. I thought about going down the street to my parents' cabin, but the idea of running down a dark road after what had just happened did not sound appealing. The rest of the night, I slept with a Heineken bottle from the mini fridge clutched in my hand. The next morning, I looked over the building and roof, trying to understand their escape plan. I still have no idea, as the only way off was to leap from the roof to the ground. But doing so would have been disruptive and maybe would have even injured them. They went in opposite directions too, which is confusing. I'm under the impression that they were staying in another room and had simply darted back into a window, but that still doesn't explain where the other guy went. As we were leaving the hotel, a family friend who lived in Graz came to meet us for breakfast. After explaining what had happened, he nonchalantly affirmed that they had intended to rob me. While I tell myself that they were probably hoping to simply steal from a tourist while he slept, another voice wonders how bad it actually could have gotten. So, Mr. Austrian burglar without a face, let's not meet again. A little bit of background. Growing up, I used to go with my mom to work sometimes because she occasionally couldn't find a babysitter. I usually liked it, and it was fun to walk around the store and help with little things here and there. Though, that being said, it was in a very bad part of town and in a not-so-good city, so I grew up around transients and homeless people. I think in hindsight, it was probably a good thing. It let me see that they were just normal people in bad times. But that also gave me a bit of a sixth sense for people, since robberies have happened while I was in the store before. My mom always kept me cooped up in a little office in the back, so I was never in danger. Now one day, my mom had to go into the store to pick up some check stubs, so I came with her. There was usually this homeless guy named Randy out front, and he never caused any problems, and the whole store knew him, so they let him sit there to rest on rainy days, like it was that particular day. We walk inside, and my mom tells me to go by the registers and wait for a little bit, so I start leaning on things and playing with the buttons of a broken cash register right next to the exit. I should also say that this day was an especially dead day at the store, so there was only one check stand open at the other end of the line of cash registers. As I'm pushing the buttons, I feel a tug on my shirt, like someone's behind me. I assume it was my mom, and turn around, only to see that it was a middle-aged couple that had deep-set wrinkles. The man smiles at me and says, "Hi, we were wondering if you wanted to buy a puppy. We have a few in our car. We can go show you one if you want to see. They're in our car." I immediately get a really bad vibe from these people. My mom always told me about people saying things like that growing up, so I was already scared just from that. I tried to get past them and say something about needing to tell my mom and needing to ask if I could get a puppy. As I'm walking around them, the man, he grabs my arm tightly and starts to drag me to the door. I immediately grab onto the edge of the register and hang on for dear life while calling out for my mom. The man didn't look strong, but compared to the strength of a kid, it felt like fighting against a bear. Eventually, of course, he pried me off the thing, and I was ready to turn around and fight tooth and nail if need be. I was going to make sure that we made noise. But just as I turned around, Randy was right there looking at us and asked if everything was okay. The woman this time came in and, in a hurried tone, said, "Oh yes, he's our son. Come on, Greg." I screamed, "My name is Carlos." Just then, my mom started coming down, and the guy holding me rushed over, separating us. And in a deadly serious tone, she asked, "Can I ask why you were holding my son?" The couple seemed to stop for a moment and think, and the woman then said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I thought it was our son. We better go look for ours," and rushed past Randy out the door. I told my mom what happened when they left, and she thanked Randy profusely for intervening. She held my hand every time we went to the store after that. So, to the creepy couple that tried to kidnap me, let's not meet. So, a little bit ago, I was jogging through my neighborhood that I just moved to. I have not experienced anything weird, but we just moved here in the fall. It's now springtime, and I guess that means the freaks are out. While jogging, up ahead of me, I see a car that pulled into a driveway, but not all the way. In our neighborhood, the driveways are long, and the sidewalks are set a bit away from the road, so they cut partway through yards and driveways. He's idling between the sidewalk and the road. As I'm getting closer to this car, the window rolls down and a man's eyes are on me. I could practically sense the slobber. I think, ew, whatever, weirdo. I pass him up. As I'm heading toward the next road, I notice the same car pass me and slow way down. I don't have time for this crap. Luckily, I have headphones in, and I'm moving at a quick pace. No time for stopping. Sorry, dude. I pass him, hoping he just gives up. He drives past me, but super slow. I ignored him. He drove ahead, and now I'm starting to freak a little, thinking, what if this guy does this the whole time? I round a soft corner, and who's at the end of the street but this jerk, stopped and waiting. Coincidentally, I am on a street with the house on it that has a backyard parallel with mine. I decide to cut through the backyard of this house and quickly get home. When I got home, I locked all the doors and am currently camped out at a window for any signs of the creeper. How lucky I am that I was where I was when this occurred. He could have followed me home, but I don't think he did because I don't see him, but I'm still keeping watch. Ugh, so weirdo that followed me while jogging? Let's not meet. So this happened when I was around 7 years old or so, with my brother who is 4 years older than me. My brother and I were sitting in the car while our mom was shopping inside of a fresh and easy grocery store. Normally we would lock the door as soon as our mom would leave, but that day we forgot. This guy came walking out of the grocery store, and he had a very distinct and creepy look to him. Immediately, my brother and I looked at each other and started yelling, "Murderer!" while laughing. We locked the doors as more of a joke, but looking back, it was a smart move. 10 or so minutes later, we see my mom briskly walking out of the store. As soon as she got to the car, she threw the groceries in the trunk and got in as fast as she could. Since we still thought it was funny, my brother and I began to tell her about the creepy-looking guy and how we thought he was a serial killer. We were expecting her to laugh, but she seemed more scared than anything. She asked us if we locked the doors and proceeded to tell us her experience inside the grocery store. The same guy was following her around as she shopped, staring right at her. She had to basically walk around in circles to get him to stop following her. Finally, he left the store, coinciding with when we saw him. After hearing her story, we were so glad we locked that car door. What first seemed like a slightly creepy guy was suddenly a lot scarier. So, creepy grocery store stalker dude? Let's not meet. So this took place back when AOL was all the hype. I can't remember what it was called exactly, but I had an AOL Kids profile. It only allowed access to approved websites via parental controls, and there were chat rooms with adult admins to keep the chat safe and friendly. This was also back when the whole ASL thing was cool, which, if you're not familiar, is age, sex, location. I'm currently a 25-year-old female, and this took place when I was 10. So one day, in one of the chats, I started talking to another girl. She was funny, so I added her as a friend so that we could IM outside of the chat. We would talk every day for all of my allowed online time, which was maybe 2 hours a day. It started as just normal kid stuff, but then she started to ask sexual-related questions. I'll skip the gory details. At first I answered her questions not really understanding what was happening, but then she started sending me pictures. As it turns out, she was not the 11-year-old girl I thought she was, but rather, he was a 30-something-year-old man. Once I started to get the pictures, I freaked out and blocked him. Now, when you block someone on AOL Kids, it sends a message to the parent profile and alerts them that you've blocked someone. It was my sister's. She raised me. So, of course, she questioned me, and when I told her what happened, I wasn't allowed to have internet privileges for about a month. Looking back now, I realize how serious the situation was, and I can't help but cringe and wonder what would have happened if I hadn't blocked him and had just kept talking to him. So, to that man who would now be in his 40s, I'm glad we never met, and let's keep it that way. This actually happened a few days ago. The Walmart in our town is right by the interstate, and it's very common for weirdos to be looking around. I've had several pretty scary encounters there. This particular time, it was about 10 in the morning, broad daylight, and me and my son were getting out of the car to go inside. This guy, about 6 feet tall and pretty hefty, walked right up to us before I shut my door all the way. Mind you, I'm a pretty small girl. He was kind of intimidating, the way he totally invaded mine and my child's bubble. I didn't even have a chance to grab my pepper spray because he was basically right on top of me. He started talking about the weather, and I proceeded to put myself between him and my son, trying to block him. I started walking into Walmart with my son, and this guy wouldn't go away. My face must have said something because a woman came up to us and hugged me, saying she's so glad I came to help her shop. Thank you, kind lady. Anyways, she shopped with us as I only needed some painting supplies, and I headed out to the gas station by my home to get gas. As soon as I'm done, this man shows up there. I'm like, you've gotta be kidding me. I let the workers know what was going on. I'm a regular there, so we know each other pretty well. They made sure to keep him distracted while I left so he couldn't follow me anymore. So thank you to the keen, nice lady and the guys at the gas station, and creepy man, let's not meet again. This story is short and sweet and to the point, but it was still scary. It's been the only time that I was truly in danger. I was around 6 years old. My family and I were just leaving the supermarket. I was begging my mom for some candy, and by the time we left, I didn't get any, so I threw a huge fit. I started stomping and crying at the exit and threatened my mom that I wouldn't leave without getting the candy. She said, "Fine, stay here then," and left me at the exit. This made me cry and scream even louder. As she was getting closer to the car, a man approached me. He just said these simple words, "Get in my van, boy. We'll catch her." I stopped crying immediately, as I knew what stranger danger was by then. I just looked at the guy and knew something bad was going to happen. My mom quickly rushed back, grabbed my hand, and yanked me away. She didn't say a word to the man, but she gave him a death glare. Needless to say, I was quiet the whole ride back home. I'm not sure what would have happened if my mom had decided to pack the groceries before she came back to get me from my little fit. I know this is short, and anything could have happened, but I still remember those words all these years later. We'll catch her. So creepy guy in the van, let's never meet again. This was in the early 90s at a Greyhound bus station. My mother was dropping off my grandmother for a cross-country visit in the depot, and my older brother and I were reading comics in the back seat of our truck in the parking lot. My younger brother, who was 7 years younger than me and 9 years younger than my older brother, was a toddler in the front seat. It was a sunny day, and the windows of our old truck were rolled down. My older brother and I were engrossed in our reading when a shadow crossed over the page of my comic. I looked up, and at the exact moment I saw the man causing the shadow, I heard my mother bellowing from across the parking lot. A tall, thin, scraggly man with long, wispy gray hair was reaching in through the window toward my younger brother. I remember seeing the veins on his arm and my hand, and I froze in shock. My mother thundered toward him, screaming, "You get away from that truck!" My mother is not a small or quiet woman, and my grandmother often said she would have made a better army sergeant than a mother. The man, terrified, took off running across a busy intersection, and the manager of the bus station came panting behind my mother, yelling for someone to call the police. So, to the POS who reaches in vehicle windows to snatch babies, let's not meet again. My family has a small acreage in the Canadian prairies. It's not too far out from the city, but far enough that it was very rare to have unexpected visitors. At the time, we had some sheep and chickens, but it wasn't a huge farm. It was just my mom, my dad, my sister, and I. My sister was 5 years older than me, so only 7 at the time. We also had a sweet dog named Maggie. My parents have always said that she was the best farm dog we ever had. She was some sort of Bouvier cross with shaggy black hair, and was very sweet with animals and kids. She also never barked or got upset without a very good reason, much unlike our last pup who, bless her soul, would bark at the wind. My dad was out of town this particular night, probably visiting my grandpa in his town down south. My mom was alone with just us little guys and Maggie, who was sleeping soundly on the porch. My mom woke up in the middle of the night to Maggie growling. My mom's a pretty light sleeper, so it doesn't take much to wake her up, but this was very unusual behavior for our pup. My mom thought it was probably an animal, so she took a peek outside. Sometimes coyotes or large bucks would upset Maggie, so that was the most likely explanation. However, this wasn't the case that night. Our farm is right adjacent to the highway, and there is a long, unlit lane that leads into our yard. It wasn't obvious at first, but my mom saw a dark vehicle slowly creeping down the lane. The car's headlights were shut off, and we didn't have a lot of light in the yard. My mom's stomach immediately sank. Anyone with good intentions wouldn't shut off their headlights. She also had 2 little kids in the house that she had to protect. She watched them slowly creep into the yard. I don't know how many there were, but at least a couple of guys got out of the vehicle and headed toward the shop where my dad keeps his tools, tractor, etc. At the time, there was a big power panel on the side that controlled all the electricity to the yard lights in the house. They opened it up and started to go through it, evidently trying to figure out how to shut off the power. God knows what their intentions were. Luckily, my family has a hunting rifle, and my mom grew up on a farm, so she knows her way around a gun. Rifle in hand, she quietly propped open the door just enough to stick the barrel out. She fired a few warning shots in the guy's direction. They freaked out and hopped back in their vehicle, reversing all the way down the lane so that she couldn't see their license plate. I honestly have no idea what these guys' plans were. Maybe just to rob us, but the idea of pulling into the yard with no headlights and shutting off the power is unsettling. Either way, I am extremely grateful for our sweet Maggie and badass mom for keeping us safe. It's been 21 years since this happened, but I sure hope we never meet those guys again. So this happened maybe a month ago. I was on my way to work, sorta hungover and super tired. I decided to stop at the gas station that's on my way there to grab an energy drink so I could get through my shift at work. I leisurely walk in and over to the fridge with all the energy drinks. I'm standing there staring at all of them, trying to think enough to make a decision, and I can't help but feel eyes on me. I quickly grab one, thinking it was the attendant in the store being weird. That's not an unusual thing with gas station attendants in my area, so I shrugged it off. I go to walk over to the counter and I see an older man, maybe in his 50s or 60s, standing there. I wasn't sure if he was checking out, digging for cash, or what, so I respectfully stood a few feet behind him. I'm standing there, shifting around, getting impatient because I'm running late. The old man looks at me and says, "Oh, you can go ahead." I politely thank him and step forward to pay for the energy drinks I'd grabbed. For a bit of reference, I'm a young female with brightly colored hair. I have to wear all black to work, and that consists of a tucked-in, form-fitting V-neck shirt and black skinny jeans. I also have a tattoo that goes from the top of my chest trailing down into my shirt. It shows when I wear just about any shirt at all. Now, back to the story. So I hand the dude my drinks and reach into my pocket for cash, and that's when this dude gets creepy. He looks up at me and asks, "How old are you, miss? I'm guessing 20-something?" So now I'm officially uncomfortable. He's old, and this felt unnecessary. Instead of being a smart person, I responded with, no, I'm 19. Well, he took that as an invitation to keep talking to me. He says, "Oh man, what I would do to be 19 again." Well, that seemed harmless. I awkwardly chuckled and shifted again. Too bad it doesn't stop there. He continues by saying, "If I was in my 20s, you'd be in trouble." He looked to the attendant, who smirked creepily, and the old man laughed and put his hand on my arm. Thank God the attendant was handing me my change, so I took my arm away from the old man, grabbed my change, shoved it into my pocket, grabbed my energy drinks, and dipped on out of there. So, old creepy man who was hitting on me and seemed like he was going to do some messed up stuff, let's not meet. Also, gas store attendant that played into it, I'm not coming back to your gas station. Hey guys, welcome back. Welcome to the end of our collection of stories for the night. I hope you've enjoyed this video. As I mentioned in the beginning, there are a lot of videos coming this month, so never you fear. I got a suggestion today, I think it was, to do a pizza delivery video, so I'll try to find some of those. I'm imagining that'll be more of a Let's Not Meet sort of collection, so we'll go ahead and try to find those. And I have some other things coming up. Our next premiere, actually, should be 100 paranormal stories, so that will be quite the premiere. We'll see how that goes. There's one premiere per week, although I think in my schedule that comes up a little more quickly because of the fact that my schedule got a little rearranged with all the technical glitches, but regardless, we'll get all the videos done and up, and we'll be able to have quite a bit of fun this month. So anyway, thank you for listening and for hanging out. If you have any ideas or thoughts or suggestions or anything like that, go ahead and leave them in the chat or in the comments. I am always happy to hear them. And I think someone else, it might have been the same person, also suggested sound effects during the Reddit stories. That's a little excessive in the editing field. I'm not sure that I would if this was like my full-time job, but I'm not sure that I have the time for that with work and grad school and everything. That does add quite a bit to the editing, but I will try to do sound effects for the stories and novels, so hopefully that'll work. But yes, I'm constantly trying to improve and do more and do things that you guys enjoy. So all the feedback, I love it all. Alright, so that's it for tonight. Thank you guys so much for being here. As I said before, I love premieres. They're more casual, we get to hang out and we get to talk, and It's just a lot of fun. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm so sorry I was gone for so long, but it seems that I've gotten all of my technical stuff together, so should be able to carry on. Alright, thanks again. Have a wonderful night. If you haven't subscribed and you enjoyed tonight's video, please do subscribe. Join the Conspiracy of Ravens, become a lovely listener, and you can join the rest of us on our next journey into the night. Take care.